add the x to both sides. Sahara, can you close the door for me? Thank you. So we're going to add the x to both sides. And that's going to give us, I'm going to write it over here, 2x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. So now we're ready to start factoring. What's A, B, and C? A is 2. B is 1. And C is -1. Let's go ahead and make our x. On top of the x, we have A times C. And at the bottom, we have B. So go ahead and look at your multiplication chart if you need to. We need two numbers that multiply to give you a -2, but add to a +1. Allergies are bothering me today. Thumbs up when you know the numbers. Just curious how many know the number. Two is only one thing that we can multiply to give us 2, and that's 1 times 2. That's it. So we're going to use our 2 and our 1. But which one do I need to make negative, though? The 2 or the 1? The 1. Yep, good job. All right, so let's make our box. The A term goes here. The C term goes here. And then we're going to put our numbers in the other two. Am I blocking it? Can you see? Okay. All right. So what goes, what am I taking out? What's my GCF? Right here. What do they both have? 2 and an X. So, yeah, 2 and an X. And our bottom row, see how what they both have is a -1. So that would be my first factor. When we look at our 2 columns, here we can take out an X. And in our last column, show me with your finger, what do you think we're going to take out? Yeah, just a 1. But it has to be a +1 because it's touching a +2. So your factors are 2x minus 1 and x plus 1. But to find our solution, we have to set those equal to 0. So let's go ahead and do that and get your 2 solutions. Is that a matcha latte? It's my favorite. I love them. I almost got one this morning, but I was like, no, you don't have the money. Because I have an addiction. I used to buy them every day. Starbucks is getting way too much of my money. All right, so we're going to add the 1 to both sides and divide by 2. So your first solution would be +1/2. And then the second one, we're going to subtract the 1. So your second solution would be -1. So your first quiz of the year is next Wednesday, and you do have 2 questions where you have to factor. Any questions about how we work through this example? All right, let's go to our notes packet. We're going to do a few more factoring questions, and then I'm going to work out a couple homework questions with you again today. But go to page 13. In your notes. So let's look at this one here where it says notes. Just remember the factors have an opposite sign. From x-intercept. So you have to write the factors, but to do that, you're going to look at where it crosses the x-axis and then flip the sign. All right, so for this first one here, notice it crosses right here and right there. I know that's not a good picture, so let me zoom in real close. Oh, wait, it's not zooming in. Hold on, let me. Okay. So do you see that right here, x is -2? So that means that the factor is going to be the opposite. It's going to be x plus 2. So that would be your first factor. And then here, it crosses at a +2. So the factor would be the opposite, x minus 2. And that would be your two factors. All right, let's look at question B. So our first one is right here, and that's a -1. So what do you think my factor is going to be? X plus 1. And then my second factor, or my second x-intercept, is here at a +5. So what do you think my factor is going to be? X minus 5. Yes. No, I just didn't know if you all could see it that well. So -5. Okay, so that's a really good question. So if you were to take this factor, if you take the x minus 5 and set it equal to 0, you get x equals 5. So remember, to get your solutions, you have to set the factors equal to 0. So that's why the factor is always opposite sign from the solution. All right, so let's look at question C. So we have an x-intercept right here. Now, 0 is the only number that doesn't have a sign. So it doesn't matter if you put x plus 0 or x minus 0. Usually we just put an x, honestly. It doesn't even get a number with it. And then our second one is at a +2. So you would write x minus 2. So you could either one of these ways to write your factors would be okay. 0 is the only number that doesn't have a sign, so you don't even need to put a 0 there. It could just be an x. All right, so let's do a couple more factoring questions together. I think we have 2, and then we'll work on our homework. Before we get there, let's look at question 13. This was actually one we did yesterday in our homework together. So let's go ahead and factor this. What's the first step? Set it equal to 0. So we got to subtract 4x from both sides. And then we take out our GCF. What do you think our GCF is? X. Because when you see x squared minus 4x, that means you have x times x minus 4 times x. So the GCF is what they both have, and in this example, that would be an x. So I'm going to take out the x, and then I'm left with x minus 4. So where it says factors, that's what you're going to write, x times x minus 4. That's your factors. So now we're going to solve it. So set this equal to 0 and set this term equal to 0. So we have x equals 0. And then our second one is x minus 4 equals 0. So for the first one, x equals 0, that's already solved. We don't need to do anything to that. Go ahead and solve that second equation. X minus 4 equals 0. All right, so we're going to add the 4. And that gives you x equals 4. So let's go ahead and make our sketch. Go ahead and put a point at 0 and put a point at 4. And then draw your smile. How did I know it was going to be a smile, though? Because it was positive. And that just reminded me, can we go backwards? Can we go back to question C? I forgot something important. What kind of graph was that one? Was C a smile or a frown? A frown. So because it's a frown, we do have to put that -1 in front. Because without that -1, the graph is not it's a smile. And this graph is a frown. So if you see that and it's a frown, we have to put that negative in front because that changes it from a smile to a frown. I knew I was forgetting something on that question. It came to me late. All right, so let's keep moving. Page 14. This right here, hint, 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 is something you want to know for our quiz, because what is the first step for factoring? Does anyone know what the first step of factoring is? Look for a, Thomas? GCF. Let's write that down. GCF is the greatest common factor. Later, we're going to talk about the difference of squares. We're not going to get into that right now. But after you check to see if it's a difference of squares, we're going to do our X box. And that's where we make our X, figure out what two numbers, multiply to this and add to that, and we put it in a box. Okay. Let's go ahead and factor this down. Question 14. First step, set it equal to 0. Does this one equal 0 right now? What does it equal? 17. So that's a positive 17. So what am I going to do with that 17? So what are we going to do with that 17 first? Subtract it because it's positive. And we're going to subtract it from the 15. Just like that. So then that's going to give us 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. So now we're ready to do our X box. So go ahead and try to do it on your own. I'm going to come around and see. Which one of those numbers would be negative? Because it has to add to be a positive 5. Go ahead and add these two numbers in your calculator. Okay, go ahead and make your box. So what were the numbers that you came up with? So A is 3, B is 5, C is -2. A times C would be a -6, B is a 5. So one more time, what were your numbers? What did you say, Rowan? -1 and +6. Let's go ahead and make our box. You have a 3x squared here and a -2 here, a +6x here and a -1x here. So let's go ahead and take out our GCFs. So for these two, we could take out a 3x and a -1. And for our columns, we could take out an x and a +2. That would be your factors. Now go ahead and set both of those equal to 0. And take the x plus 2 and set that equal to 0. So we're going to add the 1 and divide by 3. Running out of space. So x equals 1/3 would be my first solution. And for my second one, I just have to subtract 2. So let's go ahead and plot these on our x-axis. 1/3 is a little bitty number. That's between 0 and 1. So let's go ahead and put a point between 0 and 1 on our x-axis because that's a decimal. That's 1/3. And then -2 would be here. Is this graph a smile or a frown? Smile. All right, so let's work on our homework. Go ahead, take out homework 4. Remember that homework 4 is due on Tuesday. And then we actually have our first quiz next Wednesday. I'm going to pass out your study guide to Monday. Okay, so I wanted to do number 15 with you real quick. So can we look at question 15? And then Noelia, I crossed off the numbers that you see on the board next to you. You could cross off 12, 33, 40, and 43. All right, so let's look at number 15. It says x squared equals 64. So step number 1, set it equal to 0. Does anybody recognize this pattern from integrated 2? You do? Anybody else? 2 people? 3 people? All right, this is actually called the difference of squares. So if you look in the front, do you see how I have those numbers? Those are called perfect squares. Because that is a perfect square, this is actually going to break down to x in the front, because what multiplies to give you x squared is x times x. And then what's the square root of 64? Does anybody know? 8. That's going to go in the back. And with this pattern, 1 is positive and 1 is negative. So your factors end up being x plus 8 times x minus 8. Go ahead and set those equal to 0 to get your 2 solutions. And then the other one I wanted to do with you is number 18. 16, if you look at question 16 on the back, that's the same thing. That's going to break down to the difference of squares. But I wanted to talk about 18 and then we'll end there. For question 18, that says x squared plus 14 equals 50. The first thing you want to do is subtract the 50. So go ahead, pick up your calculators. Type in 14 minus 50. Yep. So it's 36. Is that one of the numbers you see in the front on my pink posters? You see 36 up there? Those are called perfect squares. So because that's there, we can break it down. Just like 15. You're going to make your 2 parentheses. The only thing you can multiply to get x squared is x times x. What multiplies to give you 36? Put that in the back. And with this pattern, one has to be positive and the other one has to be negative. Okay, so you shouldn't have that many left because we started working through these together yesterday. Go ahead, use this time to finish out your homework. And that's it.